Mama Magic Fantastic here for a Commander card tier ranking list. If you're looking to improve your spot removal in Commander, a great way to do that is by destroying or exiling multiple permanents with a single card. Sure, we have board wipes that take out everything including our own stuff, but sometimes we just need to get rid of something specific and not disrupt our own board. Today, we'll be focusing on artifact enchantment spot removal in mono white. I'll be going over the advantages and disadvantages of each card. Here are the criteria for the selected cards. First, the card must be mono white. Secondly, the card must be able to remove more than one artifact and/or enchantments. And thirdly, they cannot be a board wipe that can affect our own artifacts and/or enchantments, with a few exceptions. I will also be rating the cards with an overall rating of either excellent, very good, just okay, hardly ever play, or never play. Some cards may have an additional rating in situational decks. You may not agree with my rating, and that's okay. It is always your decision whether you use any of these cards or not, so I'll leave that up to you. We'll start in alphabetical order. Act of Authority is an enchantment for 1 white that says, when Act of Authority enters the battlefield, you may exile target artifact or enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may exile target artifact or enchantment. If you do, its controller gains control of Act of Authority. This card does exile and can hit either artifacts or enchantments. However, it is at sorcery speed, being an enchantment itself. You do have to wait a full turn until your next upkeep to get the benefit of exiling another artifact or enchantment, when you must then give control of this card to an opponent. This can be used politically to make an ally at the table, and so they can help team up with you to deal with that one problematic player at the table, or just to gain a favor in return. But then, it could be used against you too. Someone could also just choose to exile Act of Authority itself if they want. Overall, I'm giving this card a rating of just okay. Angel of the Runes is a 5/7 artifact creature angel for 5 white that has flying and says, when Angel of the Runes enters the battlefield, exile up to 2 target artifacts and/or enchantments. It also has plane cycling. The negative with this card is that its casting cost is quite expensive with a total mana value of 7 at sorcery speed. However, the upside of being able to exile up to 2 artifacts and/or enchantments makes up for that high mana value. Ideally, you don't want to be casting this creature and instead recurring it from your graveyard. And even if you have the ability to recur it, there may be much better game-winning cards that you could recur instead at the 7 mana slot. The nice thing is, early on in the game, you can pitch it to the graveyard using the plane cycling to both fetch a planes to your hand and put it into the graveyard for later recursion without using another discard outlet. Once it's on the field, you have a giant beat stick which you can really scare your opponents with. This creature is best suited if you can flicker or blink it multiple times. Overall, I'm giving this card a rating of just okay, and in situational flicker blink decks, a rating of very good. Cleansing Meditation is a sorcery for 1 white which says, destroy all enchantments. It also has Threshold, which means if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, this card reads, instead, destroy all enchantments, then return all cards in your graveyard destroyed this way to the battlefield. So, without Threshold, this card does not meet my criteria, as it is a board wipe that affects our enchantments. In a bind, you have the flexibility to destroy some of your enchantments, but you typically only want to use this when you have Threshold. This way, all your destroyed enchantments will return to the battlefield, meaning you've done a one-sided enchantment board wipe. You can also trigger all enter the battlefield effects again. Even though this is at sorcery speed, the value from this card is well worth a slot in any enchantment-based deck. Just be careful of any spell slinger decks which may be able to cast or copy your own spell effect. Even though this card is at sorcery speed, I'm giving it an overall rating of very good, and in situational enchantment-based decks, a rating of excellent. Collective Effort is a modal sorcery for 1 white. It says, escalate. Tap an untapped creature you control. Pay this cost for each mode chosen beyond the first. Choose one or more. Destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. Destroy target enchantment. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature target player controls. This card provides a lot of flexibility, but requires you to have other untapped creatures to get the most benefit out of it. This card really shines in a go-wide deck. The issue with Collective Effort is it is at sorcery speed. Should this card have been at instant speed, it would have been one of the best win cons and removal in the format, as it can hit large creatures and enchantments. It is, however, lacking artifact removal. Overall, I'm giving Collective Effort a rating of very good, and in situational go-wide decks, a rating of excellent. Consular Crackdown is an enchantment for 3 white. It says, when Consular Crackdown enters the battlefield, exile all artifacts your opponents control until Consular Crackdown leaves the battlefield. This is a nice effect to do a one-sided board wipe of all your opponent's artifacts. It does not affect enchantments though. It is nice to play against opponents who produce a lot of artifact tokens, such as constructs or treasures, as they will not come back, even if this enchantment is removed. That is one downside to this card, that if it is removed, your opponents will get back all of their artifacts, and thus re-triggering any enter the battlefield effects. It is only usable at sorcery speed, being an enchantment, and with a mana value of 5, it is a bit expensive. Aside from permanently removing artifact tokens, I'd avoid this one. I'm going to give it an overall rating of hardly ever play. Crush Contraband is an instant for 3 and a white. It says, choose one or both. Exile target artifact and or exile target enchantment. This is a nice spell that gives instant speed removal for 1 or more permanents. The fact that it exiles is superior than destroying. However, bear in mind that this card can be a bit of a trap, as I've seen people play this card thinking they can target either 2 artifacts or 2 enchantments. You cannot do that. If you want the multiple targets, it needs to be exactly 1 artifact and 1 enchantment. Should you only have 1 target instead of 2, it makes this card feel a bit underwhelming as you spent 4 mana for only 1 target. The fact that it is only 1 white pip does ease the mana cost. Overall, this card gets a rating of very good. Dismantling Wave is a sorcery for 2 and a white. It says, for each opponent destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment that player controls. You can also cycle it for 6 white, and when you cycle Dismantling Wave, destroy all artifacts and enchantments. This is a low-cost removal spell that can destroy 1 thing from each opponent, so if you need to destroy multiple things from 1 opponent, you won't be able to do it with this card. Also, if your opponent has only 1 target, you can choose not to destroy it if you feel like being political, or that permanent is benefiting you in some way. It is nice that you get flexibility in choosing either artifact or enchantment. In a pinch, you can cycle it, but that cost is quite expensive at 8 mana. But this gives you a nice flexibility if needed. Just remember, by cycling it, you will destroy all your artifacts and enchantments too. One awesome thing about cycling is it is something that can be done at instant speed and cannot be countered, except by an effect that counters an activated ability. Overall, I'm giving Dismantling Wave a rating of very good. Dust to Dust is a sorcery for 1 white. It says, exile 2 target artifacts. The fact that this exiles is very nice, but you won't be able to hit enchantments with it. Being a sorcery keeps this one from being really amazing. Just note that if there is only 1 artifact on the battlefield, you cannot use this card to exile it, as it does not say up to 2. Likewise, if you cast this while there are only 2 artifacts on the battlefield, and one happens to be one you own, then you must exile your own artifact. Overall, I'm giving this a rating of just okay. Heliad's intervention is an instant for X white white. It says destroy 1, destroy X target artifacts and or enchantments, or target player gains twice X life. This card is extremely versatile, allowing you to hit both artifacts and enchantments, and can scale with the game based on how big your mana pool is. You could spend as little as 3 mana, or enough to destroy every artifact and enchantment your opponents control without the worry of destroying your own, like in an actual board wipe. Being an instant speed means that you can hold this up for a surprise destruction, or if really needed, spend at least 3 mana to gain at least 2 extra life, just to keep you alive from a well-calculated alpha strike. The only thing holding it back is that it doesn't exile, but with the flexibility it provides, it is well worth it. Heliad's intervention gets an overall rating of excellent. Leave No Trace is an instant for 1 and a white. It says destroy target enchantment and each other enchantment that shares a color with it. Don't worry about it saying radiance, as this was just a keyword from Ravnica, meaning that the effect affects all of something that shares a color with it. Note, this is referring to the card's color, not its color identity. For example, if you target an enchantment that is both blue and green, you can also destroy every other enchantment that is blue and every other enchantment that is green. You can essentially destroy every enchantment for only 2 mana if you target a 5-colored enchantment. Once again, take note that colorless or devoid cards do not count as being a color. You could end up destroying some of your own enchantments accidentally with this spell, so be careful. It is held back by not exiling or affecting artifacts, but the widespread damage it can cause on a single opponent or opponents can be quite devastating, especially at only 2 mana. Leave No Trace gets an overall rating of very good, and situationally, if no one else is in white, a rating of excellent. Peace and Quiet is an instant for 1 and a white. It says destroy 2 target enchantments. The value that this card gives you for only 2 mana is really efficient. Even though it does not exile or affect artifacts, it's an instant which can completely take someone by surprise. This card does have the same weaknesses as Dust to Dust, whereas you are required to have 2 target enchantments, even if that means one of those targets is under your control. And you also cannot cast Peace and Quiet if there is only 1 enchantment on the battlefield, as it does not say up to 2. I give this an overall rating of very good. Return to Dust is an instant for 2 white white. It says exile target artifact or enchantment. If you cast this spell during your main phase, you may exile up to 1 other target artifact or enchantment. This card is very reminiscent of Crush Contraband, except it has 2 white pips, making it a little harder to cast, but gives you more flexibility to choose 2 artifacts or 2 enchantments, which Crush Contraband doesn't. However, even though this card says it is an instant, it's more like a sorcery. Otherwise, you can only exile 1 artifact or enchantment, as you can only hit 2 things if you use it in your main phase, like a sorcery. This used to be a go-to card for white removal, but has been outclassed by some newer options. If exiling is more important to you, then this card does get better. But as things go now, it only has an overall rating of just okay. Righteous Confluence is a sorcery for 3 white white. It says choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. Create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. Exile target enchantment, or you gain 5 life. This card does get hurt a bit by being at sorcery speed, but makes up for it in amazing flexibility in each of its options. You do have to give up the ability to hit artifacts with this, but it does exile the enchantments. You can even target up to 3 enchantments with just a single card. However, at that mana value, you're starting to look at board wipe territory. This card has the nice flexibility to fit in go wide decks, life gain decks, and has added removal attached to it. For these reasons, it gets a rating of very good in specific decks that synergize with more than one mode, but overall only gets a rating of just okay. Sarah's Liturgy is an enchantment for 2 white. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a verse counter on Sarah's Liturgy. It has an activated ability of a single white. Sacrifice Sarah's Liturgy to destroy up to X target artifacts and or enchantments, where X is the number of verse counters of Sarah's Liturgy. This is a very slow, multi-targeted removal spell. You need to spend a hefty 4 mana for this enchantment, played at sorcery speed, to do nothing the turn it comes out. Then, on your next turn, you get 1 verse counter, and need to spend 1 more mana just to destroy 1 artifact or enchantment. If you wait another turn, it's still only 2 artifacts or enchantments. It's just too slow in today's Commander format. Even proliferating is probably not a viable option. You could try recursion shenanigans with resourceful defense, but once again, you are spending a lot of time and putting in a lot of resources into an inefficient combo. I could be wrong about this combo, so prove me wrong. The worst thing about this card is if it gets removed before it has a counter on it, or you don't have a single white mana available to activate it. It was basically a useless waste of a card slot and mana spent. I give this an overall rating of never play. If you can make it work in a specific combo, it still only bumps it up to a hardly ever play. Though there is one upside to Sarah's Liturgy, and that is the card's art. It is truly beautiful. Our last card is Space Marine Devastator. This is a 3/3 Astartes Warrior creature for 3 and a white. It says, when Space Marine Devastator enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. It has the squad mechanic, where, as an additional cost to cast the spell, you may pay 2 generic mana any number of times. When this creature enters the battlefield, create that many tokens that are copies of it. This creature has a nice body, being a 3/3, and has the potential to come with a group of friends, each which will trigger the enter the battlefield effect. Sure, this card is only at sorcery speed and does not exile, but it provides great flexibility of destroying an artifact or an enchantment. Because it says up to 1, you will not be forced to destroy your own permanents if the situation arises. Bear in mind, the squad mechanic is only a cast trigger, so when you flicker or blink the Space Marine Devastator, you cannot utilize the squad mechanic again. When casting the Space Marine Devastator, you could pay 6 mana total to get 2 3/3 bodies and blow up 2 artifacts and or enchantments, or 8 mana and get 3 3/3 bodies and blow up 3 artifacts or enchantments. This may seem expensive, but the value is well worth it, even if you're not playing Flicker Blink decks. Overall, I'm giving this card a rating of excellent. I hope this list has helped you determine which artifact and enchantment removal that is more than just 1 for 1 in mono white would be right for you. Remember, your opinion may differ than mine, and I encourage you to let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, be happy, be true, be you. Thanks. Bye.